So we're hitting, okay, we're moving right along. What about documents? So all of what we talked about before that applied to this image also applies to documents. We're going to talk about document structure a little bit. And within that, yes, alt text, we're going to talk about alt text. We're going to talk about image description as well and what those things mean. Within some limits. Again, there's a lot of information out there that's available and a lot of learning opportunities. So I'm kind of hoping we can go from there, that this is just a deal. So big documents. Chances are you're not giving your students, you're probably just giving them a worksheet. So this one might not be as big of a deal, but I think it's important to know about because headings are important parts of larger documents. Can you imagine if somebody gave you a book and it was just like, that wasn't organized into chapters? Okay, better yet, they gave you a science textbook and it was just pages and pages of information and it wasn't organized into chapters, wasn't organized into unit. It was just this really big, long bunch of pages just slammed together. That's really hard. And if you give somebody who's blind a document that's 500 pages long and there are no headings, how are they supposed to know what section of the document they're in? Like it's an employee user manual. Okay, they want to know about the dress code. Well, do they have to read the entire thing before they get to the dress code? I mean, really, how annoying is that? I have a really good one about restaurants, but I'm not going to go there because frankly, we don't have the time. But there are ways for people who are using screen reading technology, like visually. Visually, you and I can look at a document and tell that there are headings, and we can tell that they're there because what makes a heading look like a heading? What makes you think something is a heading?
Well, we're larger font
Yep, larger font,
at the top,
color,
bold.
bold, all those things. Yep. If you're using a screen reader, doesn't tell you that, does it? It does not. So it's like reading a giant, just bunch of text. Also boring, by the way. But if you're using a screen reader and the let's call it a user manual for your work, your employee manual, is it organized by heading? You can find out what's the dress code, what time do I come into work, what what is the violation that is most likely to get me fired. I mean, they probably don't have that as a heading, but wouldn't it be entertaining if they did? um you know so using headings is really important in longer documents. Lists are another thing. They're very similar to headings, but they are numbered or bulleted ways of organizing information. When you're visually looking at a list, these are great examples right up in here. They're bulleted, indentations, all of that stuff tells you it's a list. So again, if you're using a screen reader, it is not going to tell you this is a list. It's going to continue to read this without giving you any indication unless you mark it that way. Quick poll. Okay, so I don't think, so that's another one, never mind. So I'm going to just come back to lists because I thought I had something before that. So headings, lists. Any questions on those two things before we go on to the spoiler alert tables, apparently?
So far, no, Amy.
Okay, cool. All right. Oops. Apparently, again, you have to go the right direction, Amy. So true or false, tables are inaccessible to screen readers and users with low vision. What do you think?
Interesting. It depends. There's a good answer.
That's
Oh,
always
it
a good answer.
depends on the format.
Yep, depends on the format. Trick question. It's all until the table is created. So apparently I can't trick you guys, which is kind of unfortunate because I was really banking on that. So a table needs to be properly formatted. So there we go. Tables can be accessible, but they have to be formatted correctly. And the reason I bring up tables is because there's a lot of worksheets that have tables in them. Tables have to be uniform. They have to have the same number of columns as rows. That doesn't mean that it has to be like a 4x4 table or an 8x8 table or a 12x12 table. No, it just had to have the same number of columns as rows. So I can have a 4-column, 3-row table. That's not a problem because throughout the table, there are always 4 columns, and throughout the table, there are always 3 rows or whatever I said in the beginning, because apparently I can't pay attention to myself. So how can I expect you guys to? You also have to make sure that they have headings. There are table commands for screen readers or for people with low vision to use to read a table. The thing is, if you have a vision impairment or low vision, it's tracking is very important. It is hard if you are seeing less at a time to track across a line. If you're seeing less of this line at a time, you're having to move more and more and more and more, which is why it's important for tables to not have split or merged rows and columns. If you're using a screen reader and are totally blind, that's even more important for other reasons. So this is an accessible table. This is a not accessible table. As you'll see, look at, here's a merged cell. These are blank cells. We can't have blank cells. Apparently this is, oops, I didn't realize that was blocking that text, but all right, I'm pretty sure I can handle this. It's perfectly okay. This is where we're going to start talking a little bit about graphics. Graphics are fine. Graphics, pictures, they're perfectly fine. They're normal. It's not a no-no. It's kind of like if you walk into a room full of blind people and ask if they watched the episode of The Biggest Loser last night. Number one, I have no idea if The Biggest Loser is even still on. I don't watch television very much. But number two, using words like watch, see, look, perfectly fine. Nobody's judging you. You know who's judging you? You're judging you because you're self-conscious. And I think the same thing applies to using pictures. There's nothing wrong with using pictures. Pictures aren't no-nos. It's how you use them. You need to be judicious with the use of pictures. It's important to make sure that you don't use a million of them to make the space look cluttered. When using graphics, they have to have, this is where we come to alternative text. So the screen readers can recognize what they are. There's more information in the resources section about how to add alternative text and what exactly it is. If an image is decorative, if it's just there to look pretty, you don't need to necessarily describe it. If it adds no information to the surrounding text at all, it's just there to be, a little cute little flourish, you just need to mark it as decorative, because I guarantee you, when I'm reading something about, and I'm pretty sure the same applies to most people. If you're reading information, you don't want to know every single detail about an image. You don't want to know everything about it, because then it takes away from the text. You need to know what's relevant about the picture to the text. If I'm looking at a map of Madagascar and the text is about Madagascar, the map of Madagascar should be described to the degree of the text. You're not going to describe the map of Madagascar with words that include the ocean that's surrounding it, because it's an island, if that makes any sense. There's a video here, if anybody is a big fan of The Simpsons. Homer Simpson tried to make a web page one time, and it was legitimately the most horrible, loud thing ever. And if you really want to laugh at how not to have a document with images, this is a great video to watch. I'm not going to play it, but basically it had just dancing pictures all over the place, and it was just horrible. It's just a funny example of what not to do. So the basics, too long, didn't read. Remember, low vision is a spectrum. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for everybody. Making documents easier to read keeps them simple and clean. Keeping documents text first when possible and avoiding visual clutter is super helpful. And you know what? You know who knows their vision the best? The student knows their vision the best. And if the student is too young or has other barriers to completely knowing or understanding their vision, their teacher, the vision impaired, will know. Or just observing the student over time, you'll figure it out. Because, you know, y'all are pretty smart people. That was a lot of information. So I'm just going to pause here and see if anybody has questions.
It doesn't look like there's anything coming in the chat right now.
All right, so I've either totally freaked you out or done a really good job. We're going to go with option 2.
You have done a really good job.
Okay.
Oh, here comes the question, Amy.
Okay.
Does text first mean have text in top left before visuals?
That's a good question. When in this context, I'm saying like text first being that's the primary focus of the resource. So like making sure that the text is the star of the show. Unless there's a good reason for the text not to be the star of the show, for like if it's a map. You know, there's a common sense stuff. If that does that answer the question, do you think?
Yep.
Okay.
We got it in the chat. So
Sweet.
Amy, can I ask one additional question about it's
Absolutely.
with graphics, but more in relation to oftentimes in presentations?
Mhm.
Sometimes people will utilize screenshots of like a website, for example, like they're highlighting something, they want to take a screenshot of something. And can you talk a little bit about those, or are you going to talk a little bit more about those later on?
You know what? That actually fits pretty good into the next section I'm going to
Perfect.
cover, because I use screenshots to explain some things and I'll show you how I use them.
Perfect.
So I think that'll answer that question. I just love
Great.
how
Thank you.
you guys are great.